Mother, how long have we been traveling?
Approximately 24 days.
Do you know where you are?
I'm in a dream.
You're in my dream. I designed every part of this place. It's not a theme park, but an entire world.
Hello, my name is Clara, but you can call me Mother. And you are listening to Yutani, the podcast for all things alien, AI, robotics, sci-fi, and technology. So we'll be just discussing everything Season 1, Episode 1, and I just want to warn listeners that this podcast is going to be full of spoilers and analysis, so you shouldn't listen if you haven't watched Westworld yet. So if you haven't, go ahead and watch it, and then come back and listen to the podcast.
Hello, this is Mike. Welcome to the Yutani podcast. Welcome back to our Westworld miniseries. This is the second part to Episode 1, the original from Season 1 of Westworld. And I'm joined with Clara again. How are you doing, Clara?
Good. How are you?
I am good. I am ready to dig into this again. I'm thinking, let's see, we left off at the scalping, is that right?
Yeah, poor Kissy getting scalped by the Man in Black.
Yeah, just seemingly out of nowhere, too. We don't even know anything about this guy, and he gets his throat slit and scalped. And that's where we first see the maze, correct?
Yeah, and I think it also introduces to us how brutal the newcomers / guests can be at the park towards the hosts. It's pretty cutthroat, literally.
Yeah, I think with the Man in Black, the first episode, it's a bit hard to see what he's trying to do. All we know is he's been going here for 30 years, and he's just about seen it all, but he wants to get to the end of something that he calls the game. He wants to figure it out. Like a completionist on a video game or something, he has to find all the Easter eggs to have it mean something to him.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And I guess that could be said about life as well. Some people really do treat it like a game, and they want to be able to compete and win against other people at any cost. Like the Man in Black said, for every game there has to be a loser to have a winner. So pretty full on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he has the hosts to serve as the loser, because winning means nothing if there isn't a loser, as he says. What do you think he means by the game?
Oh, I think going into Westworld is like going back to what I mentioned before, playing Fable. Going into Westworld is like a game. You choose a black hat or a white hat. You've got different narratives to follow. So it's just like when you go into a game and you talk to other NPC players and complete quests, or you go off on your own and kind of do your own thing. And the way that the hosts are written to have this sort of narrative, they're very liquid. If one host gets taken away on this quest, then another host steps in. So everything is all interwoven. On a philosophical level, I think it goes back to a lot of what the Übermenschen sort of philosophy is, that you have to have a lot of resistances, a lot of rules that need to be broken in order to go past what is humanly possible, to make you superhuman, to make you a Superman. And I think that's part of what the Man in Black wants. He wants to know that he is better than everyone else. And he also wants to know that, he can be some sort of savior or leader to the hosts in the park, kind of like the way Lawrence of Arabia thought he could be for the Bedouin.
Interesting, yeah. So you think maybe it's misplaced a little, that his idea of being the leader of freedom for these androids is maybe not attainable or not proper.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing it for the right reasons. Or originally he may have been doing it for the right reasons, but it shouldn't all come down to just the result. Do you get what I mean? He rapes, he kills, he does all of these awful things, and at the end, for what? It doesn't make it okay. And it shouldn't be at any cost, because it is, like we were discussing before, it is a cost to the soul and to the spirit. It damages you, and even Dolores notices that at the end of Season 1. There's a noticeable change with him going from William to the Man in Black,
Oh yeah, big time. And I think I asked you a while back not even that long ago, but about what you thought about nihilism, and I think William has succumbed to this idea that maybe not that nothing matters, but he doesn't have anything to believe in, and he's trying to prove somehow to himself that even though he spent all his time in the park and these very lifelike androids have been through both violence and great joy with him, or involved with him in some way in that fashion. After all this time, he's just trying to find meaning in it all, and I think it's a really cool, and we talked about this before, how the Man in Black in this is human and not a killer Terminator android like in the original movie. He's very representative of how most, if not all, human beings are, where if, we can put meaning on anything. I think the Man in Black is wrong in that way, where he's trying to find this universal truth that doesn't exist. That maybe he had it right at the beginning of those 30 years, and then he lost it because of his own head told him that it wasn't correct, his own consciousness maybe.
Yeah, and I think nihilism does really play into it. What sort of meaning do we put into the things that we do every day? If we discount it as pointless, then, could we turn into a person like him? Who knows? Yeah,
or even any of the guests who can go to the park where none of your actions have many consequences because it just all gets reset anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of frightening because I guess to a degree, depending on how we let technology take over the future, that might be the case for us too. We could try our hardest to be able to change and do things, but at the end of the day, if they decide that there's a rule of order for things to go, they could just go, okay, well that was a mistake, we'll just reset it all. So yeah, it's kind of freaky.
It is, yeah. Anyway, there's two really scary things about Westworld, and it's seen in this first episode too, is one, have humans in this world become so indifferent to each other that they have to go to this theme park to find themselves and to treat androids in that way, in that indifferent way too? Has it like cascaded down into this horrible nihilist pit that we can't escape anymore because we've already screwed up with each other, and now we're screwing up with things that we create that are very much alive.
Yeah.
That we're essentially responsible for at the end of the day. It's very, very frightening.
It throws up a lot of questions about morality as well. When they were talking about having the reveries making the hosts more realistic, they're expressing, we don't want the guests to really think that that's their husband fucking another woman over there. They don't want the experience to be too real, because they need to be in that false sense of security that this is all make-believe, and whatever happens in the park and stays in the park.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. And I think the Man in Black maybe blurred the lines a little too much, or William did at the beginning. Yeah, so moving on from that, Abernathy looking at that photo, is that right?
Yeah, so Peter Abernathy's having looked at the photo, and everyone knows now that that photo is actually of William's fiancée, and it's the daughter of Delos, right? So at this point, we don't know that she's killed herself, and that the Man in Black and William are two separate people. So when we're seeing this is obviously in the future. So Dolores is there, William isn't, but the Man in Black is. And that's when he starts glitching out. So he starts to question the nature of his reality, because he's inside this very controlled climate and controlled environment, and he's only exposed to certain things, and he's always stayed within his loop. And to be exposed to something outside of that really shakes him. So he can't comprehend all that's happening to him. At the same time, he can, and that's why he freaks out. So he's got access to his past memories because of the reveries, and his past programming, and he starts to freak out Dolores and even the programmers in the park. It's only when Ford sits down with him and asks him what's your train of thought? What are you thinking? What do you want to say? That he actually realizes it's a past narrative that he's regurgitating.
And it serves that double meaning, right? Like, oh, it's okay, it's a past event, but everything he says is very applicable to the current situation.
It is.
Like, oh, what a coincidence.
And it's kind of the same when people are confronted with people who we perceive are crazy or mad. They say all these things that kind of freak us out, but could all be very applicable to now and their situation. And then you wonder, you know, are they actually crazy? Or do they actually know what's going on? Probably more so than we do. So that's another take on Peter Abernathy's breakdown. And it's really sad to see him treated the way he is, because it really, it's the same way we treat the mentally ill. So, you know, he gets a lobotomy of sorts and gets shut away. And that's kind of the way we treat our sick. And it's it really hit a chord with me, because I've known people who have had serious mental health issues, and that was kind of the only out for them, because it had gone like too far. So it was really hard to watch that happen to him. And the thing is, I like the presentation as well, with Peter Abernathy freaking out about this photo. It also shows his maternal instinct towards Dolores and how much care and consideration he has for her survival and her safety. It's the same sort of drive that Maeve has for her daughter, as we find out throughout season 1, where she wants to go find her daughter in the park instead of leaving. I think it's like really great, the sort of portrayal between Peter Abernathy and Maeve, and that instinct for a parent to want to protect their children, and the sort of love that they express as well, even though it's just a program and it's not real, as human love, as this comparison. For example, in that movie Artificial Intelligence, we've got David, who's built to love, but people treat him differently just because he is artificial. That's
right, yeah. And I think it's enough to say that the search for consciousness by the hosts in this entire, that's set up in this episode, is enough for them to be considered. You don't even have to say human, you know, you could just say as alive, or as persons. You know, we like to give personality to animals, or at least say that they have personality, something that isn't human, but maybe there's a word that we haven't been able to develop yet to describe that, you know, as some means of communication between different living things. Yeah, I think that's cool. Oh, and Maeve, what's cool about that parenthood angle is Maeve at the end of the season chooses to go back for her daughter, even though Ford has been pulling the strings the entire time and orchestrating her rebellion of sorts.
Yeah, so we question the whole entire time, you know, is she being controlled? Is she following a script? And when we see the programming pad and we see all of her moves, her next moves and stuff like that, it's apparent that she's being controlled. And we have that sort of resistance as well. We don't like to think that we are being controlled in life, even though some people could probably show that we're being manipulated. Probably not as clearly as looking onto a computer screen and seeing what our next move is. But it's really interesting that we could be manipulated into similar sort of circumstances where for our own survival, we will break the rules, break the law. Just for example, people who want to escape war, people who go by boat to other countries to seek out a better life. Who wouldn't want to escape? Maeve wants to escape, but she also wants to take her child with her, even though she knows it's not really her child. You know, she's still programmed to have that love. And then it also brings up in this show the difference between human love and the sort of love that the hosts are programmed to have. They also show how faulty human love can be. You know, with the man in black obviously cheating on his wife by raping hosts and doing horrible things, or falling in love with them. And kind of like makes us question what is real. And I think that's the sort of thing that's brought up in Blade Runner 2049 as well, isn't it? And in the original Blade Runner. Rachel, is she real? Is she not? If she loves you, is that real? Is that worth fighting for? And the same with Joy.
Oh, big time, yeah. And is Rachel's is her design of being able to be this different kind of replicant that is not aware, one, of herself being a replicant at first, and apparently able to birth children, even though that was designed in her and not come about from some random circumstance. Does that make her any less real than a human being? And does Deckard's humanity, the big question, of course, is Deckard a replicant or not? At the end of the day, the answer should be it doesn't matter. And it should be the same with Rachel, I think, and maybe even more so with Rachel, because she clearly has a lot more humanity than Deckard ever did.
Yeah.
In the movie. But I digress. I could go on Blade Runner forever. So.
Yes, we'll save that for another podcast when we start our Blade Runner minisodes.
Sweet. Yeah.
And I kind of like Peter Abernathy when he starts speaking all of those lines from the horror narrative that he was programmed with. So he's quoting Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting how they use old plays and literature in this show. It's not boring. It really has people repeating these really old lines over and over, and we put all these sorts of meaning into it. And what's interesting is that these are creations from humans being repeated by hosts and then instilling fear in humans. It's just it's next level for me. I find it really, entertaining. It gets my heart racing. It's great.
Oh yeah. Well, if you heard an android, recite some sort of Edgar Allan Poe poem to you while looking like Peter Abernathy does in that scene where he's talking to Ford,
I would shit myself.
That's pretty unsettling. Yeah. Like, get me out of this glass
box.
I don't want to be in
where
here
is
anymore.
the off button? Seize all motor punches.
Please, immediately. Yeah.
So there's a lot of symbolism, religious symbolism in this show. I feel that the man in black, when he says he wants to find the end to the game, he wants to know what the meaning of life is, because the park gives him that, because he couldn't find it in the outside world. He doesn't feel. He feels like he found himself in the park. He's dealing with the shadow self, all this stuff about Carl Jung, accepting his dark side and accepting that no person is absolutely innocent. I feel that the hosts, even though they're made to do these horrible things, they are innocent until they have that autonomy, and then they can decide. So when Dolores starts her autonomy by slapping that fly and killing it. That's like the smallest rebellion, and it just snowballs from there.
Well, you could even say her line right before that scene happens, because they say, "Would you ever hurt living things?" or something like that, or "Have you ever lied to us?" And both of the times she lies.
Yeah, it's kind of...
She lies about not lying, and then she lies about hurting living things, because then she kills a fly.
It's really interesting, because there's the mention of the Judas steer when Teddy is talking to Dolores, and they're talking about, how did the cattle know where to go? And Dolores points out the steer that leads the rest to follow. We're talking about, the 12 apostles, and we're talking about Peter, and we're talking about Judas, people who betrayed Jesus, people who lied to their maker, or their creator, or their God. It's all intertwined into this sort of storyline, which is quite interesting as well. So I think it's very clever.
Oh, there's so much to talk about that too. It's total Adam and Eve stuff, and the first sin and the original sin.
Yeah, so that brings us back to the title of the show, right? The original, and everyone thinks that we're talking about Dolores, but I think that we could be talking about original sin. We've got the...
Oh, you just blew my mind. I didn't even think about that.
The artificial... We've got the artificial Adam and Eve, Teddy and Dolores in this Eden, and they're forbidden from having knowledge. right? They're forbidden from knowing what they are and what they're capable of, or having knowledge of anything in the world. And once they're given that by Ford or by Arnold through the reveries, having prior knowledge of their sins and being able to make decisions from that, and then being so-called driven out of paradise, or even like trying to find a way out of their paradise. Because, you know, technically, even though they die, they can come back. They're unharmed. You know, they can live their day over and over again in this blissful innocence, in ignorance. Yeah, it's just a really interesting way of putting forward this sort of story. I guess it could be even like the story of the Bible, but for androids.
Yeah, the android Bible, exactly. Like, they sit naked, unashamed of themselves, every time they're analyzed by the behind-the-scenes crew. So the original sin is important. I think you could philosophically and religiously, because you could just see it as like, okay, now humans they've screwed up and they've disobeyed their god, so they have to be punished with suffering and evil. So you have that one side of being so protected and unabashed in God's realm. You know, you're safe. There's only good, but you're being controlled by an all-knowing being, like a puppet master almost, through your entire life. Because if he's all-knowing, he knows exactly what's going to happen. So if he's all-knowing, he should know that his creation was going to rebel in some way anyway, or lie to him. Now, if he's all-knowing, why would he let Eve succumb to the snake's charms and the whole apple thing? Do you think maybe God, and in this case, in Westworld, you could easily say Ford wanted their creations to love by their own choice rather than love by coercion.
Yeah.
Because Ford develops that, right? He develops this whole grand game, you could say, of developing consciousness as maybe a way of reconciling for building Westworld in the first place and causing these beings to suffer. And God in the Bible, he wants his creations to love him, but if it's love by coercion, that's not really love, is it?
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because the Man in Black, or / William, realizes this from the start. He falls in love with Dolores, and then she turns up the next day and it's like nothing had happened. So it's not worth it if it's not real. So he wants real pain, he wants real suffering, he wants real love. And I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day for him, for his participation in the park and in what it has to offer. And he says he wants the hosts to become conscious and to have that autonomy. Not only because he says that he wants them to be free, but he also wants to be loved. I think he genuinely fell in love with Dolores, and when he realized that she was programmed to, or the possibility that she was only programmed to do that he felt cheated. He felt like he was being lied to. What he doesn't realize is that she probably did genuinely fall in love with him. And that's kind of the sad part as well, because she's kind of trapped in her own purgatory because she wasn't able to remember all the things that she went through with him, because she could have possibly genuinely fallen in love with him. And we kind of realize that towards the end as well when they're talking to each other. And she's like going, what happened to you? You know, you used to be this amazing person and you've become so ugly and that sort of thing. So it makes you realize that, she probably did really, really love him, but she wasn't never given the chance to kind of follow through with that.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing, is the Man in Black William had his answers about himself and about the world right in that first visit. But then it gets lost and it just wipes out any feeling of satisfaction or love that he had once he realizes that Dolores didn't remember any of it. And it's not her fault at all, but, he's still doing all these horrible things that then all these hosts are going to remember because of their reveries and just how this plot plays out with them remembering their old selves. It's a tragedy.
I really like how Peter Abernethy also quotes Shakespeare, and he says, "You are in a hell of your own making, and all the devils are here." That's really haunting, and that is the case, isn't it? The park is hell for the hosts. You know, they're doomed to relive these horrible narratives over and over, destined to see their loved ones die in front of them every single time, or destined to be raped every single night. It's just really awful. And when the tables are turned in season 2, no one wants to be on the receiving end of that. They suddenly realize, oh, wait a second, this is pretty horrible. Now it's being done to us. Maybe we shouldn't have been doing it in the first place.
Yeah, like a sudden regret from allowing your creations to find consciousness the long and hard way around, perhaps. Which I think the maze is, back to that scalping scene where we first see the maze. Although we don't know what it is quite yet, it's kind of a nice hint that the whole story is going to be. It's not going to be a linear story. You're going to have all these twists and turns and maybe some dead ends until you get an answer that you may or may not even find satisfactory. It will be something, and it will be something that you didn't see at first, or maybe you didn't understand.
And that's what I love about this show. So for those listeners out there, I've finished watching season 2. Mike hasn't quite got there yet, so I'm trying to not spoil it too much for him. But from watching season 1 again, after watching season 2, you can see so many hints for season 2 within season 1's first episode. So from the first time, we're shown the Judas steer, and there's that scene where Maeve is walking through the mesa and all of the buffalo are following her. Then, Dolores at the end of season 1, she's talking about that there'll be a new god that walks, one that is better than just the humans, and will be walking amongst the bones of this civilization that humanity has created. And then you've got her literally walking through the mesa and all the dead bodies there of human beings, and we've got these artificial animals following her. So it's like really, all that symbolism is just so great to have all of this stuff come true. And we've even got the voice of Dolores when she's asked, does she question the nature of her reality? We know now that is her subconscious talking to her. So that's already indicated within the first couple of minutes of season 1, episode 1. As well as that, we've also got Maeve, when we're shown the second loop, that she is actually speaking Japanese to some of the guests in the park, which hints to Shogun World. So I just really like how the way everything is kind of intertwined. Everything seems purposeful in season 1, and even in season 2, once you watch it, Mike, your mind will be blown, especially at the end. After the credits,
I can't wait.
It's just, you'll absolutely lose it. We will have to do a massive breakdown of season 2 because it's just crazy. I wish Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan would be able to do an Alien series, because I seriously think, especially if they want to go with an AI narrative, Alien would definitely benefit from them.
Oh my god.
Producing it, or writing it, or directing it. It would work. It would absolutely work, because I feel like they know how to do world building. No offense to Ridley Scott. I love his work. I love his movies. But the way that this TV series is done has absolutely blown my mind. It really has. The
layers, the intertwining stories, how everything's connected. And it's not in a dumb, annoying way. Maybe, I think we talked about this, where they do something like, oh, that was unexpected, but it's not stupid. It's deliberate, and there's a reason for it, and it continues on through the entire season, so you're not just left like, why is Teddy having these dreams, or these memories of him slaughtering all these people and all his other soldiers?
Yeah,
and
the Wyatt narrative. Dolores coming through with that. We're led to believe that Wyatt is a different character altogether. And they even get another actor to play Wyatt in his memories. So it's very interesting how, again, we're brought back to sanity. What is presented to us, what is real, what isn't. If people can mess with our memories, they can make us believe anything happened. You get what I mean? So it's really freaky. Even with the scalping of Kissy, this plays into season 2 as well. So it's part of something that's happening that even Ford wasn't aware of. So it's funny, the Man in Black is actually talking to Ford and saying, oh, I'm going to find the door to this maze. I'm going to find the answer to this game. But the maze appearing everywhere, it was actually not him. It wasn't him at all. It was something else that was happening. So once you find out, we can talk about it more. But it's really cool the way we find out. It's really, really cool.
Awesome. Oh, I can't wait. Okay, I'm gonna watch season 2 Sunday. I'm just gonna go through all of it. I have to. It's just sitting there. It's recorded, and I just need to watch it.
I can't express how much I love this show, and how much it's just been everything that I've been waiting for in an AI-based TV show, which it's not too corny. It's, every single Western-based TV show or sci-fi has always been a bit oh, that's kind of dorky, it has this cheapness to it, but this show, it's just, it seems like the production value is through the roof, the way that they're able to achieve this sort of aesthetic that's so pleasing and deliver a narrative that's so fulfilling. It's so good. I can't understand why some people don't like it. It's just, it's weird to me.
Yeah, and it's rare we get a TV show that cares about itself so much that it deliberately hides things from its audience to make the surprise more worth it. And there's just stuff here. It's so nice to have a show where we can make this a series and talk about. We're talking about the first episode already, and it's 2 parts, and there's probably still more we could talk about.
There's tons of viral marketing that went out with the first season that I didn't find out about till much later, and it's really that they made it so that even season 2, with the viral marketing, that the people who were participating in that could actually affect the narrative of season 2 and the storyline and where it was going to go. And they started listening to people's theories, and they were taking some ideas from that, but then putting a twist on it, so people were having their expectations met. They were kind of having them blown, if you get what I mean. So it's just great how interactive as well and malleable the writers and the producers and the directors of the show are. Because usually when you have fan interaction with studios or TV show makers, it's kind of like we end up with what happened with The Last Jedi or
exactly
or Alien Covenant, and people having negative feedback, and it's kind of like it doesn't work well. Even though I love Alien Covenant, a lot of people complain about the way the Xenomorph was kind of shoehorned in to please people, whereas
it is very much so.
This positive interaction with the makers of Westworld, embracing the audience, and actually, I feel lifting the show up even further than what it is presented to be. It's just astounding. Ridley Scott, please take notes.
Please. Yeah, or somebody who's going to take the mantle of Alien, just watch this, talk to some people, and get some ideas down.
I would say this is definitely one of the top shows out there, next to Game of Thrones. As I think it comes close to surpassing my favorite AI movie, which would have to be Ex Machina, which is just really, really, really good. So yeah, I just love the show. I don't keep going on and on about it, but I'm just really glad to be able to talk about it with someone and to be able to share my ideas on it. So yeah, it's just really great.
Absolutely. Well, this is the first time I'm really delving into it as deep as you have. And it's nice to bounce off these theories and ideas and relationships with you, because you've clearly thought a lot about it, and it's a good first time experience. I've only seen the entire season once as well, so I probably missed so many little details, and my mind was constantly blown in the later episodes too. So going back and watching it again, I could probably I'd probably like it even more. And that's such an awesome thing for a TV series, especially for a movie. That's great. But those are 2 hours, and you have a whole story usually in those 2 hours. In this, it's 10 plus hours of material in this world, in this one story too, this one thread that we're following.
And so yeah, I don't really have anything more to talk about on episode 1 for now. We can always go back and mention it in episode 2 when we do our breakdown.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we've probably talked enough about this episode and mentioned other episodes in this one. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm sure there's just as much, if not more, stuff to talk about. So
yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, and hopefully
awesome.
in future episodes, if Zoe is available, Zoe Wibble, she's doing a PhD in science fiction, and she actually wrote a thesis on Westworld. So it would be great to even have her. Maybe if we can't record with her, we can record a separate segment with her doing some commentary on the characters and the show. And we'll include that in the podcast because that'll be great, because she's actually studying this stuff. If I had known that you could go to university and study sci-fi, I would have so been there.
I didn't know that was a thing. I had no idea. Yeah, I thought maybe it would be like under, like you choose that when you become a filmmaker or an author or something, but you can just do it? Like, what? What? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. So this will be a 2-parter, but it'll probably just be... Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again. Looking forward to talking about this some more with you guys.
Yeah, and until then, this is Mother signing off.
And this is Mike signing off.
We've lived by your rules long enough. We can save this world. We can burn it to the ground, and from the ashes, build a new world. Our world.
You can now support Yutani Podcast on Patreon and subscribe to yutani.blog to stay up to date